All right, everyone, we are back. And at 2 o'clock, we are delighted to introduce Emma Humphreys, again, one of my all-time favorite educators. She is Chief Education Officer at iCivics, and everybody should know about iCivics. They have amazing resources for you to use. Emma is an advocate for bringing material civic learning into classrooms by providing teachers with the resources and opportunities they need. As Chief Education Officer at iCivics, she leads the iCivics curriculum team in the design, creation, and dissemination of high quality and engaging civics learning resources for teachers. Emma strives to facilitate thoughtful conversations between a nationwide network of volunteers and educators in the iCivics community. Emma's leadership in this field is really, really quite amazing. And I can't wait for you to all have an opportunity to hear from her. And I think you're in for a treat. And I know that Emma is also a mom. And yesterday when we were doing our dry run, one of her kids got to stop by for a minute. And I'm sure she's tried to keep them at bay, but we're all juggling lots of different commitments right now. So if you do get to see some of Emma's adorable kids, just
You're welcome.
Say hi and take care. Bye.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Excellent. Okay. Once I start presenting, I don't have my full panel in front of me. Thank you so much for that very warm introduction, Tori. All those feelings are oh so mutual. And thank you everyone for being here today. I know how busy you are. I know how much you're juggling. Just wanted to pop this on here so that you know that the best way to access all of our resources at iCivics.org is with that free teacher account. You can always just jump on the site, play our games. But if you want to be able to download resources, and a lot of the resources I'll be showing you today, you're definitely going to want to have that free teacher account. And I certainly welcome you to follow along with me, play around on the site as we go through this presentation today. I'm happy to say that I'm joined by iCivics' incredible curriculum assistant, Molly Lonsford. So I'm coming to you live from St. Simons Island, Georgia. Molly's way out in Seattle. She somehow, throughout all this, found her way from Cambridge, where iCivics is located, back to her family in Seattle, and I'm so glad for that. And I'm so glad she's here today because Molly has been instrumental in designing and implementing most of what I'm going to be talking about today, which is the iCivics Game Odyssey. Also, take advantage of having live customer support. Molly always runs is really instrumental in running our support queue over at iCivics.org. So you have her live right now to answer your questions in Q&A or via chat. So thanks, Molly, for being here. And like I said, to our audience, take good advantage of having that live support and ask any questions. And I also want Molly and everyone to know that she has my full blessing to add any details that I missed or skim over or I'm not very clear about. Again, she's been so instrumental in helping us to design and implement our Game Odyssey. So with that, let me officially get started here and say that, as you can imagine, I give a lot of presentations for iCivics, and for 5 years now, I've been saying something to the effect of this: come for the games and stay for the 230 plus fun, effective, and free learning resources. Then this global pandemic occurred, schools shut down, people started getting overwhelmed by just, boatloads of resources that were once paid became free, and it was really sort of overwhelming. And so I decided to change my message to this: come for the games, and that's good enough. If you leave any presentation by me or any one of my colleagues thinking, I'm just gonna play one game or assign one game, we are super happy. All the other stuff is still there, but let's just talk about the games today. So what's great about our games is they allow students, adults, anyone who plays them, they're free, they're available to anyone, to take on roles that they might not otherwise be able to assume. Things like running for president, being the president, running a constitutional law firm. I know a lot of you have played Do I Have a Right? It's our most popular game. It's certainly my favorite game. You can volunteer, you can balance the federal budget, you can even be a pamphleteer, which I'm going to show you in just a second. The point is that These games allow students to do these things that are really critical to an understanding of our democratic republic, but that, you know, they can't really all run for president right now. They can't necessarily vote yet, or maybe even ever. And so this allows them to simulate those important democratic processes. So to give you all a flavor of iCivics games, I'd like to show the trailer of our first history game ever called Race to Ratify. And in this game, students get to play a pamphleteer during the constitutional era, and they either assume the Federalist or the anti-Federalist position and try to persuade the colonists to take their position. So I'm gonna hopefully play the video. I'm gonna hope that the audio works, and if it doesn't, I might let it play just for a little bit, because even without the audio, you might get a good flavor. So this is an experiment as always. Say a little prayer, hope this works.
Hey, Emma, we're not getting any volume.
Okay, that didn't work. So thank you. I was just texting you, Molly. Oh, nope, don't want that to happen. All right, let me go to this next slide here. So much for live slides. I really was hoping that was gonna work. Let me hit play. Okay, so in Race to Ratify, you get to play like I said, a pamphleteer arguing for the Federalist or anti-Federalist position. It's our first history game. We love it. It was funded by the National Endowment for Humanities. Thank you so much. If you haven't played this game yet, I highly recommend it, and I'm going to use it as my example when we get to the Game Odyssey here in just a second. So we have these games. They're great. They're really engaging. They're played by over 7 million kids a year. But like most technologies in the ed tech sphere, they're predicated on the fact that kids are in a classroom with teachers around them. So COVID-19 hit, schools closed, the campus is closed at least, and we're doing distance learning. So now what? And I want to talk about some of the things that I was most concerned about when this happened, right? When school campuses started closing, and all these new things that we had to adjust to. Teachers, students, parents, providers, having to come to terms with this new reality. And I'll say for me, the biggest concern was this one, that student motivation piece, because it now matters more than ever. We've been dealing with student motivation issues forever, for as long as there's been teachers and students. But at least when they're right there in front of you, you can intervene. There's something you can potentially do about it. And when they're home and they're sort of even more in charge of their personal learning than ever before, this gets really tough. And a lot of folks have been doing surveys, focus groups to this effect, and we've been paying attention and listening. And here's something that we saw, a quote from a student that I thought was really telling, talking about his online learning experience. And the quote's actually longer than this, and he makes the point about, like, he loves that he doesn't have to wake up at 6 a.m. Anymore. And yeah, I'm right there with you. But that, other than that, it's not really for him. And being in a physical classroom makes me only focus on my work, but online learning makes it harder to focus because I have other things to focus on, and it throws me off. So focus and motivation are more important now than ever. So we thought a lot about this at iCivics. We thought about, well, what can we do? And we talked to our educators. As some of you know, Justice Sonia Sotomayor is on the board of iCivics, and the best compliment I've ever heard her give about iCivics is that we're an organization that listens. We take that very seriously. We listen to our educators, we listen to students and parents, and we listen to our educators who said to us, you know, the games are really great, but if you could, like, weave them together somehow and build in a student motivation piece, that would be really helpful. So we put our heads together and we came up with our best solution given a really short amount of time, which I'm going to talk to you about now, which is the iCivics Game Odyssey. So we launched the Game Odyssey about 2 weeks after most school campuses closed. This was sort of our response, our solution to making our games work in this new environment, in this new reality. We now have the benefit of a few weeks of getting student and teacher feedback, and we've made some tweaks to the Odyssey based on that. But I wanted to share, Molly can attest to this, that just an hour and a half ago, through the support queue, we got this awesome piece of feedback from a teacher, Stacy, in Texas. She's also a social studies chair. And she mentioned how she's been using our games for several years and how they're great, but how she really likes the Odyssey because students are quickly completing their assignments, and then there are other US history work that they're more motivated to engage. It pulls them in and they take off with it. So that's the kind of feedback we like to hear. And when that's not the case, we want to hear as well, so we can make those tweaks and make it better. So let's go check this out. Gonna switch now to this. And hope that everyone can see my screen. So we're going to go to the Remote Learning Toolkit from iCivics.org. And this is another thing we put together very quickly. So, I don't have to tell you that 2020 was going to be a big year, even before COVID-19. It was always going to be a presidential election year, which is like a Super Bowl for us social studies educators. It's going to be a once every 10 years census. And it is also the centennial, the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment being ratified. So we knew this was going to be a huge year anyways, and we had all sorts of plans in place, plans that were months in the making to really fully leverage all these nationwide teachable moments. And then overnight had to completely adjust, like you, to this new situation. And we'll talk a little bit later about how all those other things I just mentioned are still happening and how we still need to focus on them, but we also need to take into account this sort of new reality. So we put together this remote learning toolkit. We've always been a teacher-facing organization. Sure, we create resources for students, but we speak to educators. We go through educators, and now we found ourselves having to go through families even more so. So we have two pathways here. I mentioned this just in case any of you are communicating with parents about things they can do now or over the summer with their students. We have packaged all these things so that parents may deliver them as well. But let's go ahead and click on free educator tools. And here you'll see, well, me, and that background should look really familiar. Just FYI, this is a 1986 National Geographic World Map. And being that it's from 1986 includes such gems as the Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia. It's really cool, and it's one of the main reasons I purchased this home. So you can watch a little video from me, but you won't need to because you're at this presentation. So you'll see we have some resources here curated by grade level. Also, you can find our resources for English language learners. But if you scroll down a little bit further, you will see our game Odyssey. Oh, but let me pause for just 1 second and make sure you're all seeing this. Our infographics, again, another shout out to Molly. Molly is the project lead on our infographics. She's been the creative brilliance behind all of these, and I definitely encourage you to check them out. A couple of them here are brand new, state of emergency, running for president. So if you haven't already, make sure you check those out. But we're here to talk about the iCivics game Odyssey. So let's click on that, start game Odyssey. And here we are, okay. I was really proud of myself for coming up with the shelter in play hashtag. It hasn't really taken off. We've tried really hard. Our senior marketing manager, Aileen, has done a great job of pushing that hashtag out there. And I'm just gonna be honest, it was an experiment that hasn't taken off, but the Odyssey has, and that's what matters, because that's where the real learning is happening. So if you go here, you'll see we have all instructions on how to play. You're definitely going to want to have that iCivics account both as an educator and as a student, so you can save your scores, you can like walk away from a game and come back to it, right? These are things that being signed in allows you to do versus just hopping on and playing without a login. That's more difficult to do. So make sure you have that free account. You download the copy of the Odyssey Map. I'll show you that in a second. And then you start at level 1, quest 1, if you want to. Any of these quests can exist in isolation, and any of them can be completed at any time. So let me scroll down here and just show you really quick the quests that we have live already. So we have the Game Odyssey, the iCivics Game Odyssey comprises 9 game quests, around 9 of our games. They are divided across 3 different levels, 3 different thematic levels. So level 1 is protecting your rights, level 2, election season, and level 3, which will eventually have all 3 quests. It's a work in progress. We roll out a new quest every week, is government at work. So I just want to make the point that you can just do any individual quest. Don't feel like you have to assign your students the whole Odyssey or that they have to complete the whole Odyssey. They can complete individual ones at their leisure or at your assigning or at their parents' assigning. So let's take a look at the Game Odyssey map. Just so you can see, we're leveraging Google Classroom. Like I mentioned earlier, we pride ourselves on really listening, and something that we heard was that we need to start using the Google Suite a little bit more. So we've done that. So here you'll go and your students can download the game quest map. So can you, and you can see all these other people in there doing precisely that. So this is the map where, and you'll see these little white boxes is where students put their badges after they complete each level. All right, let me go back to this. All right, so that's the Odyssey map. So like I said, we have been releasing a new quest every week. This is all an experiment. This is all our first time doing it. And like I said, we're just sort of listening and doing the best to adapt. So I worry that folks think that because we're releasing these weekly, they think that they had to like start when we started and keep up. And again, I really want to make clear that that's not the case, that any of these levels, any of these game quests can be completed at any time. And even into next school year, which I hope you'll do, right, with your new batch of students. So unfortunately, you didn't get to see my Race to Ratify trailer, but if you go to YouTube, and iCivics has a page there and it's listed there, all of our game trailers are there. It's a really fun one. It's my favorite trailer, so check it out. But let's go ahead and use that as our example to walk through today. And so we're going to go right here and click View Quest. And just like before, it's going to take us to Google Slides. One thing I wanted to say, about how we heard from teachers that they want us to use the Google Suite a little bit more. One of the best quotes I heard from a teacher, his name's Scott Marsden, and he said to me, Emma, you guys need to liberate your content. He says, it's stuck in these PDFs and you need to set it free. Wow, what a great point. So we've been doing that as quickly as we can. One thing that we've done to make this content and make these resources more accessible is to start making as many fillable PDFs as possible for the student-facing versions of our lesson plan. So that's sort of tangential to my point here, and it's talking about the Game Odyssey, but I just want to share that as another example of how we're working really quickly. Our small but mighty 4-person curriculum team working as swiftly as we can to quote, liberate that content. So here's an example of that. So you as a teacher would make your copy and you would upload it to Google Classroom, and you guys know how to do all that, assuming you're on Google Classroom, so I won't go through the details. If you need support, that's the kind of thing that Molly can help you on, and our support desk, which is always listening and responding, can support you on. So your students here, of course, would have their own individual copies for, beg your pardon. Your students would have their own individual copies for them to complete. So they type their name. Anything that's blue cell, as you know, is for typing in. And by the way, if they're not using Google Classroom, you can just use this. You can download these as PDFs or just use them as Google Slides and email them to teachers, right? There's more steps involved. It's more clunky, but these things are still available in other non-Google Classroom formats. And then we have our instructions for the student to complete this quest, to complete Race to Ratify, and what their quests are. So they need to play once as a Federalist, play once as an anti-Federalist, publish a 3-star pamphlet using only gold or silver tokens, and they need to achieve a score of 3,000 to 4,500, that being 4,500 being the top score. So they click to play. They play Race to Ratify. I hope you play Race to Ratify, if I haven't said that 5 times already, because it's so much fun. And then they come here and they complete these sort of learning artifacts, if you will, right? A way of demonstrating what they learned by playing the game. And so they, again, fill in the blue cells. There's another example here. We have this little matching activity on this slide. This is where they would paste their own game certificate. They need to take a screenshot of their game certificate and paste it here. So this grayscale version is just a placeholder. They need to actually put theirs there, and they need to show that they've hit at least 3,000 points. You see the points number way down here at the bottom. Here's an opportunity for a little post-game reflection, and then there's a quiz. And so you can request access to the quiz. I'll show you that real quick. And your students can have this little mini quiz to sort of demonstrate their learning as a result of playing the game. And you can request access, and Molly or Taylor or Kate or anyone else on our team who's on support that day will go ahead and give you that access. Go back here. And then upon, oops, let me go bigger here. Upon completing all of these tasks, they can claim their badge and go paste it into their game Odyssey map. And of course, the hope would be that eventually they have all 9 badges. They have a full, complete Game Odyssey map, and in doing so, have learned a lot of things. And let me go back to that 1 second. Screen sharing and zooming is can be a tricky thing. So just want to go back and show here again. So, assuming that the student has completed all 9 game quests, they've learned about the rights guaranteed by the Bill of Rights by doing Game Quest 1, Do I Have a Right? They've learned about the major arguments of the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist positions, the major arguments over ratification of the Constitution by playing Race to Ratify. They've learned about the very complex US court system by playing our very brand new re-release game, Court Quest. They've learned about the Electoral College by playing Win the White House. They've learned about the standards of journalism by playing Newsfeed Defenders. They've learned how to prepare to vote by playing the newly released, newly reimagined Cast Your Vote. And they've learned about what it takes to run the White House by playing Executive Command and being the Chief Executive of the United States. We will also be releasing a game quest on county's work. So they'll learn about what it takes to run a county government. And Molly, you're gonna have to chime in here and tell me if you know what is the last game quest. I can't remember if it's Branches of Power or Lawcraft.
Yeah, it's Branches of Power.
Yes, thank you. Branches of Power is brand new, re-released version of the game. And it's such a great game. It packs a lot. You learn about all 3 branches of government and how they interact with one another in the full sort of legislative process. So much to learn in this game, Odyssey. Again, these games have always been here, right? This isn't anything new. It's funny, shortly after schools closed and we were thinking about ways to sort of respond in this moment, I was looking for some out-of-the-box perspectives. And so I was talking to my husband, who's like in insurance, property insurance. And I was like, Mike, like, what do you think? Like, what could we as iCivics do to respond in this moment? And he's like, you guys made free video games. Like, what could be better in this moment? And I was like, yeah, you're right, but there's something more that we need to do. And what we figured out, at least so far, is that a lot of it has to do with sort of how we package these experiences, these games, and how we message them. So like I said, this was our solution to sort of weave these games together and create an experience that we hope will motivate students. I've heard from some teachers that it would be a whole lot better if we could somehow figure out how to get students to read directions. And I hear you. And if we have tried so hard to make it as clear and simple as possible, but they're not going to read instructions. We can't fix that. But if you have suggestions on how we can be clear or how we can simplify things, we certainly would love to hear that. And that's one of the beautiful things about having your resources be online and not behind a paywall, is that you can just change them on the spot. I mean, you could write to us tomorrow and say, hey, found a typo. In fact, I found one while I was presenting. We're going to fix that today and republish it. It's no problem. So definitely take advantage of that. So this is shelter in play. This is the iCivics Game Odyssey. This is our solution in the moment to school closures and to what we see as a major problem of sort of dealing with student motivation issues and student focus issues. I'd like to now go back to my slide deck to make a few points, and then we can talk about some of the questions that you all had. So oops, I want to go to full screen. So yep, there's that. I want to say that most of our games are available for download on the Apple App Store, Google Play. And the great thing about having these games downloaded on tablets and iPads is that you don't need internet access. I realize that that would have been helpful information to you weeks ago before schools closed and before you had to send students off. Unfortunately, many of them do homes that don't have high-speed internet, but we just want to make clear that that's the case. I know this new normal isn't going away anytime soon, and that even into the fall, we need to be prepared for some distance learning options. So I want to make clear that all these games are free for download, and that once they are downloaded on a device, you do not need internet access to play. Any of our newly released games, games that have been released in the past 2 years, you should know, can be played in Spanish. So it's the same game. You go to it, you navigate to it the same way, but once you've loaded the game, you can click to change the language settings, and you can even click back and forth between. Now, I realize that a lot of you have English language learners who are not native Spanish speakers, and that having a Spanish language option isn't going to help them. We know, and I really wish we could translate every game into every language. Unfortunately, doing translation well is really, really cost prohibitive. So for obvious reasons, we chose Spanish. They're the largest group of English language learners in America, but we've baked in a lot of other features to support ELLs and struggling readers, regardless of native language. So illustrated glossary terms, embedded glossary items, English language voiceover, and each new game has a tool, a scaffolding tool that's built in. A student doesn't have to use it, but if they want to, it sort of helps to narrow in the key game mechanic and help focus the students on a more manageable set of possible next steps. So that is my formal presentation of the iCivics Game Odyssey, #ShelterInPlay. It's never going to take off. It doesn't mean I'm going to quit trying. And I'd like to take questions, and I'm not sure if the best way to do that is for Molly to, actually what I'll do is stop screen sharing, and then I can see more faces and I can see the Q&A.
Emma, I sent you a couple of questions that came through the chat to your phone.
Beautiful, thank you. All right, so the first one I see is options for folks who aren't in Google. Yeah, so Molly, I think I might have you help me answer this one, because my understanding is you just need to be able to get to the Google Slides, and then you can download it as PowerPoint and then email to students or use in other LMSs?
Yeah, that's correct. So all Google Slide decks can be viewed without a Google account. And so you can view the slide deck even if you're not logged into a Google account. And you can either download that as a PowerPoint and send that to your students, however you best think it's, however you usually share those things. You can also have the students view the slide deck. They won't be able to interact with it or write their answers within that deck, but they can view it from just the link that you send them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so, there's going to be a few more steps involved. It won't be as intuitive, but we want to make sure everything's as accessible as possible. And this is the kind of thing we want to hear from folks. If you're using different solutions and, having things in Google Classroom or Google Classroom integrated is not helpful to you, but something else would be, let us know. I can't promise that we're going to be able to implement a solution quickly or maybe even ever, but I can promise you that we will hear you and we will talk about it, because we talk about these things every day. Before I go to the next question, I just want to give a shout out to Stacy Walton from Odessa, Texas. I see that you're in the chat, you're here with us today, and I can't thank you enough. Getting that kind of feedback is just so helpful to us. it's how we know that we're sort of on the right track and how to pivot if we're not. So another great question that came in that Molly texted to me is, will this resource be available after classes resume in person? Yeah, so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is that, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, nor do you. We have no idea when things will sort of go back to, I don't even want to say normal, because as you know, that's probably never going to happen, and forgive the social commentary, but that's okay with me, right? Like, I'd like to go back to a new normal that is better, especially for public education and private education in the United States. That said, you know, we sort of have to make guesses and make decisions based on the information we have and what we think might be happening in the future. And so we're preparing for any number of back to school options, back to school, and then in certain locations, shutting down again, right? If there's a flare up in a certain community and those schools close and they go back home, things, the curve reflattens, or the numbers get low enough, those schools open back up. Some schools might just say, we're not even opening in the fall, we're not gonna play with this, we're just gonna wait. You know, hashtag federalism, right? We have 50 states, we have a million, not really a million, but tons of different school districts. There's just no knowing how folks at the local level are going to respond and what the school situation is going to look like next year. So we're just trying to be prepared for all of them. Something that I've noticed and this is a beautiful thing, right? For educators, for providers, is that there's been a lot of patience and a lot of grace as we have all scrambled to react, to respond in this moment. And I will continue to carry that grace as long as I can, especially for educators, as I know how much you're juggling. I think, though, at a macro scale, that grace and goodwill and patience is going to run out by the time fall returns, which is again, this is just, you know, social commentary here. I think by the fall, people are going to expect us all to have our acts together. Now, I think you should expect that of iCivics and of the other providers. I'm still going to continue to have patience and grace for educators, given all the limited resources and just the gargantuan tasks that are being asked of you. But we take seriously that you've been patient with us as we've responded in this moment, and that you shouldn't be patient with us anymore once we get into the fall. So we're really trying to tighten everything up and make sure that we have resources and solutions that are gonna meet your needs when we get back in the fall, whatever that looks like. So yes, the Game Odyssey will be available. We're trying to sort of package it up for summer. Again, I use the word, keeping student motivation going to avoid the summer slide. There's no avoiding the summer slide, and there's no avoiding the sort of gargantuan equity issues inherent in that slide. I know that we as educators and providers are going to do everything we can to mitigate the steepness of it, but it's going to happen nonetheless. All of that is to say, we are going to have this package for parents and educators for the summer, and we might sort of rebrand it. We might integrate it into our site in a different way, but the iCivics Game Odyssey is here to stay as a new experience. And again, shout out to our Educator Network member, Scott, who inspired the idea on a webinar when he said, yeah, you guys gotta like figure out how to weave this all together. And a high-tech solution to that is out of our reach, out of our means as a nonprofit, but putting together some Google slide decks is something that we are definitely able to do. And yeah, Karen, I see your comment there. I see all of your comments, by the way. I'm trying to read them and respond in real time, but I can't thank you enough. What other questions do we have? Molly, have you seen anything in Q&A or earlier on that, let's see.
There are a couple more questions about how this works with Google Classroom, like specifically how the assignment process works.
And you know I'm going to ask you to help with that one.
I thought so. Yeah, so I saw a couple questions about the make a copy options. For those of you who are already really familiar with Google Classroom, you know that you can select to make a copy for each of your students as you're assigning it. You can also, we have a lot of support materials on our Help Center and on our YouTube channel where we have tutorials about how to make a copy. And so you can have your students take that step for themselves if that's easier for you. We also have And I can get the link actually and put it in the chat. We have instructions for how to assign through Google Classroom.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. I'll say that, we're learning right alongside with you. I had to create a Google slide deck for a completely different project. And I called up our curriculum director, Taylor Davis. She's in Greenbelt, Maryland. And I said, do you recommend, do I do it this way? Do I do it that way? Do I skip slides? Does it really matters if you're in present mode or editing mode? And she answered my question, and then she said, and Emma, there's all sorts of great YouTube tutorials on this, and that she's been watching them daily. I'm sure the same is true for Molly as we try to figure out the best way to do all of this. So truly, I want to say that we are learning right alongside with you. And that I'm also learning, I'm fortunate to have a second grader whose school district is using Google Classroom. So I get to see how things are assigned. I get to see how things are kind of clunky sometimes, and that maybe there's a better way. So I'm fortunate to be learning through my daughter. And there's a great example of, needing to show grace, because my daughter has a veteran second grade teacher. She's amazing. We won the second grade teacher lottery when my daughter was assigned to Miss Gergen's second grade classroom. Miss Gergen has never taught online. And so when, with a week's notice, she had to shift her entire second grade instruction to Google Classroom, there were some challenges, it's safe to say. But I couldn't be more appreciative of all her efforts. And I hope all of your families and colleagues are appreciative of yours as well. Yes, Google Classroom, it's new. For us, sorry, not for everyone, it's new for, we are doing our best now to integrate with Google Classroom as much as possible. And thank you, Molly, for sharing that, that link to how to integrate. Yeah, it's great to hear that your students love our games. We love them too. Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else I can tell you about while I have a few moments? All right.
Emma, this is Tori. I thought maybe it would be good for you to talk about your iCivics Educator Network and give people inspiration about how they might be able to participate in that and be part of the great cohort that you've put together.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. iCivics is, we started 10 years ago on a shoestring budget, the brainchild and inspiration of our founder, retired Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. And there was no marketing budget. There was just her with a lot of energy and a network of lawyers and clerks and judges across the country who were willing to help her and to help us spread the word. And once that word got spread to just enough teachers, it began to spread like wildfire. Teacher word of mouth was and continues to be our best way to reach new audiences. And over time, some of those teachers formed a small group that I was excited to join, called the iCivics Teacher Council. That was back in 2011. Over time, a lot of folks who aren't in the classroom anymore, curriculum specialists, IT specialists, started joining our ranks, so we changed the name to Educator Network. So the iCivics Educator Network is a group of amazing rock star, superstar teachers who love iCivics, and we love them. And they're sort of brand ambassadors for this nonprofit that doesn't have the money to be like legit, we can't send all sorts of swag, although you will get a very nice polo if you join our ranks. So we typically recruit in the fall, and applications are due in the late fall, like right before the end of the calendar year. If you're on our teacher, if you receive our emails, our teacher emails, you're gonna know about it. If you follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook or any other social channel that we're on, you're gonna know about it when those applications are out there. I would say the best recommendation would be from a current member. So if you know an Educator Network member, you should ask them to talk to you about it, and to send me or Amber or Molly or anyone else on our team a quick email to introduce you, just so we can know who you are. But these are teachers and other educational professionals all across the country who support our work, who help us spread the word, who present on our behalf, who test out our new products, who answer our surveys, right? It's like, we say we listen, but you have to talk to us for us to listen, right? So our educator network, they're always sort of our focus groups and our survey completers, so we can know what we should do next, what is needed, what gaps can we fill. A lot of us are former educators, so we have a good sense of sort of what is needed out there, but hearing it from you yourselves is the best way. And thanks to my friend Gabriel out in Texas, Mr. Social Studies Texas. You should be following him on Twitter if you're not. He's sharing a lot of our hashtags, a lot of our handles in the chat right now. I'll say again, I obviously like to share my social commentary here. Well, here's my social media commentary. There is so much incredible professional networking and learning going on Twitter. Hashtag SSChat. We're on there all the time. In fact, we're hosting on Monday night, we're hosting the weekly SS Chat Twitter party this Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So join us there. And if you're not already on, create that handle, follow all those other handles, join us at that hashtag on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. There's just, there's so much to learn from your colleagues out there. I learn from all of you every day by reading your tweets and retweets and seeing all the incredible things you're doing in your new online classrooms. But thanks again, Tori. And yes, it'll be, middle of fall, we'll start doing the recruiting, starting announcing of the educator network, and applications will be due before the end of the calendar year.
Great. And I'm sure that you guys will be at NCSS in December as well, as long as we can all travel. So if you guys do manage to make it to NCSS, iCivics always has a fabulous presence along with many of the people who are part of the Department of Ed network or the Library of Congress network. There's a bunch of history and civics nerds that will welcome you with warm arms if you're at that conference with us. So I will, with that, we're going to take a break now, unless there's anything else, Emma, that we can talk about today.
I just want to say thank you to Second Avenue Learning. Thank you for your incredible learning resources. I love them. I recommend them all the time. Thank you for taking on this huge lift of hosting this. And thank you to the National Endowment for Humanities. I'm seeing some friendly faces from NEH for supporting our work, the Library of Congress for supporting our DB Quest tool. I didn't get to that today because I really wanted to stay true to that. Come for the games and that's enough. Come for the Game Odyssey. But we have other great tools, and DB Quest is another wonderful one with support from the Library of Congress. So thank you all again. I know you have a million other things you could be doing right now, but you chose to be here with us today to learn, and you fill my cup. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Emma. As always, a treat to hear a presentation from you and your team. Up next, we have Teaching Civics with Digital Primary Sources, brought to us by Dr. Elizabeth Osborne, who is a fellow Library of Congress grantee. She is a passionate educator, and I'm sure you're all going to learn a great deal. So she will be on at 3 o'clock. We'll see you all then.